And that feeling inside of me that is directly correlated and connected to shame. I mean, it makes a ton of sense that it is like this visceral somatic experience in your body or in my body. It makes a ton of sense as I'm talking about all of this out loud. I'm also hearing like this other part that's like, wait a minute, dude, did you just crack the code? You literally connected like emotions with physical things in your, like, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. But at the same time, there's a part of me that when I feel shame, I don't feel human. I feel like it feels like banishment almost. It feels like I am no longer accepted in this normal society.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight. Ain't nothing needed.
Figure out where my water goes. I don't remember where my water
I know,
goes.
you can tell that everything's a little bit different because, like, it feels a little bit different, right?
Right?
As we're looking over here, which they're not looking, as we're looking at the cameras, babe,
As we are.
you can tell the TV's higher.
It is.
It's because the cameras are everything's a little bit different.
A little bit
I
different.
brought everything back into the studio and I was
It's
like,
brand new.
I'll be able to get everything exactly where it was. That didn't happen.
Well, I love it, but my brain.
You're over there struggling with
Well,
your
I
show.
thought I'm so used to like sitting down and
Yeah.
being ready to go, and I thought everything's, and I realized like, oh, I
No.
should have took a second because
Everything's
it's
off
a little
slightly.
different.
Yeah.
So off you go.
What are you doing now? Now you're taking more time. Okay.
No, yeah, there you go. You look at you.
I feel like you got it set where you want it.
Uh-huh.
You're doing wonderfully, beautifully, amazing. So happy, so proud of you. You did such a good job. I realized
fun of
that
me.
I don't think we have ever recorded an episode of the Steph and Craig show in the evening.
Of the Steph and Craig show in the evening. I don't think we have.
I don't think we have. This is a first
Yeah.
for 2025. And honestly, it kind of and let's clarify, like the evening doesn't mean that like it's 5 o'clock.
Sorry.
I think it's like 5:15 right now, maybe 5:30 at the latest.
It's so evening. It's nighttime. It's nighttime.
We have transitioned to that phase of life where we are usually in bed by 9 o'clock, right? We already ate dinner at like 4. So
It was also, to be fair, it was also breakfast and lunch.
Right.
So
but I like the vibe. It feels, and it's obviously because the day has been so beautiful and we've got such a great vibe we're riding anyways. But
yeah.
maybe this might be a new opportunity for us to record in the evening times. I don't know how you'd feel about that, but
I don't know how you'd feel about that.
well, this is what I'm recognizing. My schedule is changing.
Okay.
And so I'm letting go of the control of how my schedule is supposed to go. So like my routine and I wake up and I do this and I do this. And on podcast days, we do this, like that whole thing. I'm letting it take shape for 2025. So I'm letting a new schedule show itself to me. And in order to do that, I just have to like get curious, right? And so as we were setting up tonight and our day went as such that we just kind of ended up being here in order to get this episode recorded, which I'm excited for. And I'm excited that we're here. But I realized as I was getting everything switched over and stuff, I'm like, oh, maybe this is what's happening. Maybe the, universe is saying this is when you should record. Maybe this is a new opportunity for you to. So I'm going to get more curious about it. And I thought, what do you think, just initially right off the top of your head, as we present the option of potentially recording in the evening times?
Right? I used to want the evening times.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here and I'm just like, oh my gosh, a little tired. I would love an afternoon.
An afternoon
Like
record.
like a late afternoon.
Yeah. Which is what
people
this
might
is.
well, not for me. This is evening.
In your mind, what's your late afternoon?
I don't know, like 2, 3, 4
Okay.
time frame. I'm willing to get curious and fill out because I like my mornings slow. I like to do things in the morning that feel like, and if we're recording in the morning, then I feel like I don't get to do those.
Yeah.
And sometimes getting ready for some reason will take me way longer in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And in the evening, I'm a little tired. I don't know. It's the afternoon feels like, okay, I got to do my stuff. Now I'm ready. I feel pretty good in the afternoon.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm down. So we'll
give it a
we'll
go.
talk after the podcast. Hit me up after the podcast.
My people
and we'll
will call
figure
your
this out,
people.
right? So we'll have our people talk after the podcast. The beginning of 2025, we're recording this on New Year's Day. and it's going to be out next week. So you'll see, you'll hear on whatever the 4th or the 5th or whatever the 6th or on the, who knows when you're going to hear this podcast, but this podcast was recorded on January 1st of 2025. And it's easily been one of the most beautiful, magnificent days that we've had in quite a long time. We have a long history of having magical days with aha moments and awarenesses and synchronicities and all sorts of different things happening to both of us. And we had one of those days today. And it was so fun to be able to come home and connect with you and just drop in and be able to hear about all of these awesome things. But I think I don't think I've ever had one on January 1st, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been like New Year, New Me. Like I don't think I've ever really embodied that experience. And I feel like I'm getting if this is how 2025 is starting.
Yeah.
Like think of it that way.
That'd be great.
This is how 2025 is starting, is our day today. And I'm just like, holy folks.
It's like not the New Year, New Me thing. That doesn't I feel like New Year, finally me.
Yes, baby. Yes.
Finally.
Say it again.
New Year.
Exactly as you said it before. How does that feel?
Being me. Yeah.
How does that feel?
That. No, it feels good. It honestly, everything today has felt good. And I hope that whoever's listening, when you're listening, that's like help, like feeling good and you're jiving with it. Because not every day feels like this, and but this has been a day of just beautifulness.
Yeah.
It's been a day of absolutely like cloud nine, so happy. And I love New Year's. I love all the New Year's. This isn't the only New Year's. Like
I know you mentioned that last night. And I was like, I know you've told me that before. I know we had that conversation before. And so I felt really bad because the first time I heard it, I was like, mental note, New Year's needs to be magical. And then I forgot. And then when we were driving home last night after, going out to dinner and everything, it was like, oh, shoot, I forgot. Steph loves New Year's. I got to make New Year's magical. Maybe I got the message or somebody got the message because
it's totally
obviously
magical.
We had an amazing evening and night and yeah.
And it's not just once a year. You're like New Year's is only like January 1st. There's the pagan New Year. There's the Zodiac New Year. October 31st. First, it's the shifting of the realms, the shifting of.
Yeah. That's the pagan New Year.
There's a lot. There's the Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
And another big one for me is new moons.
Yes.
So like it happens. I love the
Moon
beginning,
energy.
the starting, it's so full of possibilities and it feels so good and I love it. I just love it.
In the last, I don't even know, because I have tracked the moon I track the moon with my journaling. So every morning I'm in my journal process. Part of that is I write at the very top, I write moon dash whatever percentage it's full.
Yeah.
So whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, 14%, whatever percentage it's full, whether it's waxing or waning. So whether it's going towards the full or coming towards the new, and then whatever, what would we call, babe? Sign or house it's in, whatever.
Yeah, whatever like zodiac it is. Yeah.
And what I've recognized is at some point, because I love the full moon.
Yeah.
I love it. I remember loving it I remember being a teenager and standing outside and doing the whole thing where I'm putting my finger up over the moon, right? I've always loved the full moon. So full moons are real magical times for me. And I don't even know, like in the last couple of years, it's the awareness of like, I love the new moon and the full moon. I'm like, I'm not as interested in what's taking place energetically. I'm not as interested in what like is, because oftentimes in the tracking of the moon with all the journaling stuff, it gives me the opportunity to kind of reflect on, okay, the moon's in this location and I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. And I recognized at some point, and it may have been that way all along, I just didn't realize it, but I recognized at some point that I dream I don't say only because I know that I have them outside of this time, but consistently, not even like to the point where it's like every now and then or 3 out of 5, when it's the new moon is when I dream. And I dream vividly, extensively during the new moon. And during the full moon, as it starts to, it's so fascinating because as it starts to go towards the full moon, my dreams start to disappear.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like you suddenly are like, did you dream last night? I don't know, kind of. I feel like I got a faint one in there that I can kind of pull up. And then you ask me on a new moon, I'm like, it's fucking crazy what I dreamt last night. You're not going to believe this. I told you this morning.
Right.
And when I told you this morning, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah.
I love that new moon energy.
Same.
Right?
Same. The new moon is my favorite. Love the full moon. I love the moon in all its phases, but the new moon is my favorite. I love it. And also another really like magical, it's where we're at right now, is the waxing crescents. When you've had the new moon and it's starting to fill again.
Yeah.
The thin, the sliver, the like,
You like that little Cheshire?
gosh, I so much.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
And
it's
same
fun.
with the dreams.
Do you find the same thing? I
Yeah.
think we've talked about that
Yes.
before too, right?
Yes.
I had this thing, I keep forgetting to tell
Oh,
people all
here
of
we
these
go.
things that pop into my head. I forgot to tell you before we were podcasting, but it's happening now
Okay.
anyways. I have this thing that I'm always in my head about, like, not that I talk too much on the podcast. It's, we talk about the same stuff too much.
Yeah.
So the story I have in my head is like, if I'm saying something on the podcast that I've talked about before on a previous podcast, even if it was like 8 years ago, right? I'm like, I think we talked about this on Energy is Love back in night.
Yeah.
I always criticize and judge myself internally. I was like, dude, you can't do that. Like, you got to stop talking about the same things. People are going to stop listening if they tune in and just hear the same old bullshit that you keep
Right.
talking about over and over and over and over again. So I had this epiphany the other day when I was driving around where I was like, we, meaning you and me as the podcast hosts, like
Us.
consciously recognizing that every single episode of the podcast is its own individual thing. So we don't have to ever stress or worry about talking about something else that we've talked about yesterday or last week or, on a previous episode of the podcast, because the majority of the time when that, like, because I started to reflect and be like, I hear that all the time on podcasts. I hear podcast hosts talk about the same thing over and over and over and over again. They'll mention the same story, the same topic, the same thing that's going on to a different guest or to a different person or at a different time, because that's normal human conversation. And suddenly I was like, oh, I can let that one go.
Yeah. That's nice.
Right?
How's that feel?
Well, it feels great.
Right.
It feels great to recognize, and I've had so many of these recently where it's like normal human behavior I have been shaming myself for. Like, and that alone has been a real big opportunity for me in the last few days in order to look for those. Because every time I'm finding, how funny would it be if this was the case? What if this is the medicine right here, where shame itself is only associated with normal human behaviors. So every time you feel shame, it's actually an indication of you just having a normal human experience, because all of my shame is associated with experiences over the course of my life, right? I've got the greatest hits of the shame. I got shame's greatest hits. Came out super backwards.
What is it again?
I got shame hits of 2025. But what if every moment that you feel shame, it's simply because you're exhibiting a normal human behavior that humans experience, but at some point along the way, somebody told you that it was wrong and that you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't feel that way, or you shouldn't think that. What if that's the gift that shame is? It just points at normal human behavior that you can not just forgive yourself. Because like when I recognize what I just got done recognizing of like, oh, you talk about the same thing to different people because it's the stuff you're interested in. So it's like, oh, this is what's in my head. And this is what, so when you're having conversations professionally on a podcast with multiple people, even though it's you and me a lot of the time on this show, but at the same time, it's like, of course you're going to talk about the same things over and over again because that's normal human behavior. And I'm like, turns out I'm normal. I can forgive myself. I don't have to carry the shame. That just came to me, that idea. Doesn't that make a lot of sense?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you're not shaming yourself for that.
Right.
Because
how silly. We can
do shame ourselves for normal human behavior. And not only do we get shamed for that, we shame ourselves. We were taught to shame that, but you'll also pick up on other people. Like, I don't agree with that statement. Like,
you're not agreeing with my mantra for 2025.
It's okay though.
Hashtag shame.
Right. It's okay though. Because I'm also looking at there's like things that I have chosen in the past. Now, granted, the tools that I had at the time, my ability to use the tools, all of those things are very much a factor.
Yeah.
So I can understand. I can understand things, but there's also like there's behaviors that is now healthy guilt.
Yes.
And healthy remorse.
Right.
So as to not repeat.
Yes.
But things that I it's probably good that I felt shame for.
So if you haven't heard yet, we picked up Pickleball and we're having a blast. It's super, super fun. And if you haven't started playing yet, I hope that you do soon. And if you do, we want to help you by avoiding what we did. See, when we started playing pickleball, we just went on Amazon and found some paddles that looked cool. Little did we know, but they actually were hurting our pickleball game and holding us back from being the absolute best pickleball players that we could be. And when we found out that there was a pickleball paddle company here in Tennessee, actually not too far from where we live, we got super excited. Element 6 was started by a couple of brothers who were passionate about the sport and decided to go in and make their own paddles because they needed something that served their purposes a little bit better. Lucky for us, they're now sponsoring the podcast. And I can tell you from experience that their paddles definitely make a difference. The very first time I picked up their paddle and just held it in my hand, I knew I was going to be a better pickleball player as soon as I started playing with it. And it turns out I totally am. They have paddles for everybody, for the beginner, the intermediate, and the pro level. Head over to our website, stephcraig.co, and click on the link for E6 pickleball paddles. I highly recommend their brand new one, the Torrent, which is what we play with. When you're ready to buy, make sure to use the code StephenCraig. Not only will you save 10%, but the guys over at E6 are also going to send you out a free gift along with your order. So pick up pickleball, pick up a new paddle from Element 6. We hope to see you on the court soon. Not too long ago, I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find us some new clothes that didn't have all sorts of toxic stuff in them. I was tired of wearing synthetic material when I worked out, when I did things like jiu-jitsu and yard work and hiking and everything like that, because it wasn't really breathable and it started to stink a lot as well. Well, lucky for me, I found Woolly clothing. Woolly uses natural merino wool, and I'm a huge fan. All of their clothes are super soft and they feel really, really good next to your skin. Their clothes are naturally moisture repellent, so when you're wearing them and working out, it almost feels like it's cooling you off. They're also odor resistant, so they don't stink after you wear them. They have a great line of men and women's clothing, and if you've never tried merino wool, I highly recommend Woolly. I've got their boxers on right now. Every episode of the podcast, I wear one of their V-neck shirts. I'm really excited for where the weather starts to change and it starts to cool off a little bit, because then I get to put on my Woolly hoodie again. Head over to our website at stephcraig.co and click on the link for Woolly. And when you're ready to check out, be sure to use the code StephenCraig. You'll save 15% on your order. Show them some love and get yourself a great pair of merino wool socks or underwear, or boxers, shirts, pants, shorts, tank tops, workout gear, you name it, Woolly has it.
Because, and you know, maybe not shame, the guilt, right? But hear me out though. Okay. I'm not done.
Sorry, I didn't mean to point at you.
I know, you pointed at me.
I totally pointed at you.
Don't point at me. There's 3 fingers pointing back at you. But I also watch.
Are you pointing at them now? You just pointed at them.
Damn. Sorry.
Sorry, keep going, babe. I'm teasing you.
People, I'm seeing this come up a lot, is people who see you do big things, see you be bold and be braver in areas where they couldn't.
Yes.
Then when you try, they shame you for.
Yes.
And so that's That's not
normal
something
human
you
behavior.
shouldn't be shamed for. But maybe
So
I don't know how to articulate it as
let
well.
me
But
articulate my thought a little
I'm
bit
not
more.
done. You got your chance,
sorry, go
Mista.
ahead. Mista.
I just don't. I absolutely resonate with it. We shame ourselves for normal human behavior and make ourselves wrong for being a human.
Yes.
And like that, absolutely. Absolutely. And then if you try to not have human characteristics, then you're fake. And if you try like all the things, we find a way to shame our existence.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I don't think that everything we feel shame for is, I mean, everything we feel is a human behavior, but I don't know that it's I don't think it's a healthy or whatever normal. I don't think it's a healthy human behavior.
Okay.
So there's things that we have shame for that you're like, you're right, I should not have done that.
Okay. So this is what I want to talk about.
Okay,
because
here we go.
As this comes up on the podcast, as it has such as things come up on podcasts, by the way, don't forget to remind me to tell you the story about what came up on Brave Men Dare.
Okay. Or should we just make them go listen?
Well, no, it's because it went on in my head.
Okay.
So it didn't happen on Brave Men Dare. It happened in my head during Brave Men Dare.
Oh, okay.
Something Ben and I were talking about got sparked.
Okay.
And then I had this massive like awareness moment.
Okay.
So it was really interesting.
That is. I'm going to put something in my hand.
Okay.
And hold it in a weird way.
Baby, I'm down for whatever you're up for. This sounds like fucking Steph and Craig after 5 p.m.
So I remember that I'm supposed to remind
Folks,
you of
if you
something.
Can go find our
You'll look at me and
OnlyFans.
be like, why is she holding
this in a weird
shaft in her hand?
Hey, if you're not watching us on YouTube, this is a whole show, folks. It's the Steph and Craig show.
It's a crystal.
Okay.
It's fine.
That's what she calls it.
Oh, I was going to say something. So I will remind you. But in the meantime of all this, do you remember what you were just saying? Do you?
I do.
Go.
Shame. Back to what sparked the conversation for us was this awareness that I had that I don't need to be, I can obviously forgive myself for talking about the same thing twice.
You sure can. Yes.
Right. And then, do you remember the one that we were talking about last night on the way to dinner, where if you remember it and it's something that you're like, I don't know if you want to talk about that on the podcast, then let me know. And if you're like, oh yeah, it was this thing, because I don't remember it.
What if I don't remember?
That's totally fine too. So we don't remember.
We're gonna figure out together.
We don't remember what we were talking about, but the awareness that I was having during that conversation was, I was exhibiting a normal human behavior. It's the name thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we were having this conversation yesterday on our way to New Year's Eve dinner. We went with Ben and Jamie and some other friends, and it was a beautiful night. Or Jamie is Ben's wife. Anyways, that's not the point of the story. And we were talking about names and what happens when you hear a name. So when you hear a name or see a name or somebody, whatever, right? All the different ways that we hear, see, and read names. That every time I do that, every time I see a name, depending upon the name, oftentimes there's the person who I associate that name with that appears in front of me. It's like suddenly in my head, I picture this person, Stephanie's obviously an easy example, but do you know what I mean? It's like Adam. If somebody were to say Adam, because Adam's my older brother. So if I ever meet an Adam or I hear an Adam on TV, or like there's that Netflix show with Ryan Reynolds where he was, that was Adam's project or something, or the Adam Project.
Yes.
Same thing. Every time I see Adam, flash, I see my brother in my head. It isn't a, I picture my brother in that movie, or suddenly it's just a flash. It's literally like
the
flashcards.
synapses connection point of
it's
like,
just, I hear the name and then flash, right? I just get it. And we were talking about that last night in the context of some of the stuff that we were going through and processing together in the moment. And when I came across that awareness that all I'm doing is a normal human behavior.
Yep. People make those associations.
Because you do it.
I
you
do.
said that was something that you could relate to, and I'm like, my guess, I'm probably not the only one who hears a name and then pictures that person.
It's so funny. I mean, not funny. It's actually sad that you thought, oh, I'm wrong.
Well,
I'm bad.
So, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to shame. As I was sitting here and we were talking about this just a second ago, I was really resonating and dropping into what does shame feel like in my body? And then I just started to, and there's a specific feel to shame, at least for me.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's different than any of the other emotions, and I recognize it immediately. It's a shameful feeling. It's let me see if I can explain it more. All I did was say the same word over and over again in different.
I think everybody,
everybody can understand what that is.
Well, you should talk about how it feels like for you,
That's
but
true.
I think what shame feels like isn't hard. I think people are gonna, resonate
right.
with that and like, oh, there it is.
You're like, are you happy? Like we get confused with joy and anxiety a lot, right? Sometimes that shows up in our body and we're like, I'm just so anxious. And you're like, is it anxious or are you actually excited and you're full of joy?
Right.
But those two, like, I don't confuse shame with anything else.
Yeah.
When I feel shame, I know what I'm feeling. Does that make sense? It feels the same way in my body every single time. It feels like I'm being looked at and not just like judged or criticized, but it feels like I am being like all the lights are on me.
Examined.
Right? Yeah.
Like that.
Examine's a good word.
Yeah. That's a trigger for me.
Ooh,
it's a trigger.
That's a good word.
I resonate with that. It's gnarly.
It doesn't feel good.
No.
So
no.
As we were talking about this and I was recognizing that I have been shaming myself for normal human behaviors, I went back and ran through all of those moments that were kind of popping up in my head when I was feeling shame. And I used that perspective and that lens to look at that moment. And I was like, that's a normal human behavior. It's not to say, when I say normal, it's not saying that it's healthy, right?
Okay.
It's not saying that it's
So are you trying to say like?
Yeah, that's a great clarifier. I'm not saying that these normal human behavior moments that I felt shame for, that's not saying that the behavior at times was not healthy or appropriate, or do you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be.
That's a big clarifier. I totally thought, like, I think I even like spoke for you on that, like healthy behaviors. It's not normal, healthy. I thought that's what you were saying because I don't like the word normal because it feels like.
Right, that it fits into this little box of what
you were saying.
That's not, well, I didn't realize that's not what I was saying because as we're fleshing this out and talking about it. And it's definitely not saying quote unquote like normal or healthy. I'm removing judgment and criticism from the equation. So I'm not looking at it from a judgmental perspective. I'm not looking at it from a perspective where I have to decide what category this normal human behavior falls into. All I'm looking at it is from the perspective of every time I feel shame, it's for a human behavior. It's for something that people normally, like that normal people do, that somebody else has done, right? And that feeling inside of me that is directly correlated and connected to shame. I mean, it makes a ton of sense that it is like this visceral somatic experience in your body or in my body, right? It makes a ton of sense as I'm talking about all of this out loud. I'm also hearing like this other part that's like, wait a minute, dude, did you just crack the code? You literally connected like emotions with physical things in your, like, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. But at the same time, there's a part of me that like when I feel shame, I don't feel human. I feel like it feels like banishment almost. It feels like I am no longer accepted in this normal society. I must have done something that is so like catastrophic that they've never come across it. That's what shame feels like to me in my body, where it touches this spot where it just feels like thrown away garbage.
That's the exact word that was in my head. Garbage.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at that now and I'm like, what if it's all just normal human behavior? And I've never made that association because it feels so ucky
Yeah.
that it's like, how could, like, and I don't want anybody to see it. Like, that's the thing. A lot of times, like, I felt silly talking about what started this whole conversation on the podcast because I feel silly that the normal human behavior that I was shaming myself for was just simply talking about things, like multiple times.
Yeah.
Like mentioning the same thing a couple of times on a podcast. I was shaming myself for that.
I started with feeling too happy at the beginning. I was feeling happy and joyful and like things are going like well. And it was like, oh, like I started feeling like shame. I'm like, if that's not where you're at, started with the disclaimers. I still have a lot of feeling around shame.
Yeah.
So I can see
Me
how the healthy remorse is, at least in this point in my life, I feel like healthy remorse it's
crucial.
It's crucial. And I say at least at this point in my life, because there's so many things that I was like, this is absolute fact. This is the way it is, that I don't believe anymore, that I don't think. In fact, not only do I not believe or think, I'm like, wow, that was really wrong and easy to have shame over. So even things that feel like, yeah, of course, I'm like at this point in my life, because I don't know what's going to be truth for me tomorrow. I don't know what's going to be something that I've learned. I don't know what's like how my point of view can shift, because as more information comes in, you learn more. Your point of view shift, or they should. At least I think, right? I think they should. I think stagnation is not a good thing. But oh my gosh, I totally got sidetracked. I don't even know where I was going now. I totally got nervous. I'm like, you better explain that. You better explain that. Because shame is so tricky that it's keeping me in that loop. So healthy remorse is good.
Yes.
I feel like it's important, and it's not something that I'm willing to take away from my space, at least at this point. And it's something that I hope to see. It's accountability is what it is. That's the word, accountability.
As I'm talking about this shame and recognizing it, does it sound like I'm excusing it away? Like I'm I'm just like washing away, being like, well, I have nothing else to do now. I have forgiven myself and recognized I was just being human.
Right? Is the shame coming in?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
right.
As you're talking, I'm like, I'm not excusing things. I had never had this perspective before. I had never seen it this way before. And it suddenly just feels like this flower opened up and I saw way more of this thing that helps me understand. Truthfully, it helps me love myself more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I think there was definitely part of me that heard that. And I would, I can't say that there's part of me that wasn't like, well, there goes accountability.
Yeah.
Even though I know better.
Yeah.
Like there's still part of me. And as I preface by saying, I still have a lot of healing to do with shame.
Yeah.
And like for me, that was my, if I could shame myself, I could prevent myself from doing things. If I could shame myself, I could keep myself safe. If I could shame myself, I would like stop things. It was just, it wasn't an encouragement. It was a shame. Like you shame and guilt, all of this. So having the, what I'm trying to spit out, but is so difficult for me because it's so convoluted in this space. And there's still so much work that I have to do here, is the importance of the healthy remorse. And just seeing that shame actually, like I see where you're going with the human behaviors to a point, like what I'm starting to get and what's resonating with me. Maybe I don't see where you're going, but what's resonating with me from what you said is shame doesn't stop those behaviors. What shame does is helps continue those behaviors. Because if you're shaming yourself, it's not about an action, it's about you, your worth. So if you're shaming yourself, you are garbage. Like you said, you feel like that, you are garbage. And if you think you are garbage, you feel, you are garbage, you're not making your best choices.
Yeah.
Healthy remorse and feeling guilt, which can be careful, over is going to help move you
Yeah.
towards that.
Like you said,
and it's not feeling guilty all
accountability.
the time, but like it takes you to the accountability. But the shame, there's no purpose. But it's still so ingrained on how shameful I am or how shameful I feel, even though like I hope there's a day where I can be like, shame doesn't exist in my world anymore. You know, I'm just not shameful anymore. I'm
Yeah, and-
accountable, but right now
Exactly.
it's still there. So I think if you take shame away, then
Then what?
then it's just going to be a world full of perpetrators, right? Which is not it. Accountable people aren't
Don't
doing
hurt
that.
other people.
Don't hurt other people. Shameful people
Hurt other people.
because they're feeling shame,
Yeah.
you know? So I can see to a point, and like this is a big like workspace for me. There's
Isn't
a
it
lot here. I'm like,
interesting?
whoa.
As we're talking about this, because truthfully, do you remember, like, I know it was like 5 minutes ago because it was this podcast,
Okay.
but do you remember how this started?
Full of happiness and joy, and somehow we managed to be shameful.
Not the beginning of the podcast, this entire conversation about shame. I was telling you, hey, we can let ourselves off the hook if we talk
Right?
about we can just look at every single episode as a standalone episode
Right?
and we don't have to stress about it. That's how this started off.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here being like, where did I learn to shame myself for telling like stories twice? And then I'm sitting here and I'm like, every time my dad tells me that he has to drink a small glass of orange juice now because of the same story about the size of orange juice that he's drinking now, I judge him for it. So now I'm on this rabbit hole of like, where did I learn that? Who taught me how to all these different things? Because I'm just looking at it so clearly of like, it's normal. There's like the idea that I was shaming myself for, I mean, that's the sad part for me in this moment is the recognition of, yes, there are some things. First and foremost, I don't think shame is, maybe that's why it feels so unique in the way that it feels, because it almost feels like it's what somebody puts on you. It's a hex. It's a thing that somebody puts on you. Somebody says, here's my shame, you carry it now. So it's not even an emotion. Maybe that's why it doesn't feel good in our bodies.
Yeah.
Because
It doesn't even belong to us. It doesn't even belong to us.
It's somebody coming along and just going,
That's true.
here's the thing that I feel ashamed about.
And I'm can't
gonna
carry it.
Yeah.
So it's on you.
Exactly.
I didn't mean to finish your sentence there. It's
We're
just
doing
because
great.
it started to like really
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, how sad is it that at some point I got told that I must have been the dumbest piece of shit or whatever about just mentioning something twice, right? It's so silly and it's so sad because, like I said, when I had a moment when I was driving in the car and I was thinking about the podcast and it was like, oh gosh, dang it. I think I mentioned that on a previous episode. And then I went down the same shame spiral that I always go down. If it's no different. That shame spiral is no different than this shame spiral over here that I go down. And this one that I go, it's just the shame spiral that I go down about a bunch of stuff. Right.
right. Anything. What can I shame myself over for today? Like
and as soon as I started to go down that spiral and I started to recognize, I was like, hold up. Why am I feeling bad about this? This feels really weird. And I started to unpack it and suddenly I could like Rogan, I listened to Rogan, or I used to listen to Rogan a lot. I still listen to him every now and then, depending upon the guests that he has on. But I mean, that motherfucker's telling the same stories over and over. And the truth of it is because he's talking to so many people.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
How can like
you can't.
Right?
It's a normal human behavior.
It's a normal human behavior.
And so I'm looking at it and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so silly. I don't need to feel bad about this anymore.
Right.
And it alleviated the shame from that one. So as soon as I had awareness of that now, every time I recognize that I mentioned something twice on the podcast, ever since I had that awareness and alleviated that shame from that moment, now when I recognize it, I kind of chuckle and I give myself a bunch of love. Now when it happens again, because it didn't fix the problem, right? I
There was no
still,
problem.
well, that's the whole thing is it's like what fixed the problem was the awareness that this was just a normal human behavior. And then the shame went away and I was able to just go, oh, that's funny. And just kind of like, now when it happens, I just love myself in that moment. So I think we're on to something.
We usually are. We should start a podcast.
That's right. That's a good idea. Let's put that on our list for 2025.
Here we go.
We'll get that podcast off the ground this year.
Oh my goodness.
I think that we're probably a lot like you, where we had some pans that had been kicking around our kitchen since we met, actually. They're over a decade old, and it was time for them to go. Lucky for us, we found Heritage Still. Heritage Still offers premium cookware that's made right here in the U.S.A. It's actually made here in our backyard in Tennessee. We ditched our old pans and we got ourselves an entire set of Heritage Still. All of their cookware has 5-ply construction, which gives you superior heat distribution and retention when cooking. They also offer a lifetime warranty, which is really hard to find nowadays. Their cookware is versatile for all cooktops. We have a gas range and we absolutely love the way our Heritage pans heat up. They're chemical-free, oven-safe, easy to clean, and Heritage Still is committed to sustainability. They use environmentally conscious practices when producing their cookware. For listeners of the podcast right now, you can save 10% on your order. Head over to heritagestill.us/Steph Craig, and don't forget to use the code Steph Craig at checkout to save that 10%. That's the, like, I'm super excited now. Now I'm going to go search for shame. Because I almost guarantee 95% of them are laughable, normal human behaviors. And there's probably 5% in there that I know there's like 5% in there that I got to do a lot of work on.
Yeah. That's going to can I speak to that?
Oh, yeah.
Please. Please.
Speak.
There's like, for instance, this, like that one you're saying, and then the one that you talked about us, how we had this conversation on the way where you mentioned at the, like, you don't want anybody to see. You don't want to talk about it. Like, it's because it's shameful. You're like, oh, I'm unlovable.
Yeah.
So it's that fear of the shame. But when you talk about it and somebody's like, me too. Like that's, when you start to speak it and take it out of the dark and hear that there's not you're not bad for that. You're not. And if it's something that is like, oh, maybe you should check yourself on that, then that gives you the option to move into accountability. Like, oh, that's something that I need to look at. Mm-hmm. That's something that is actually good for me to look at because that's something that I want to change. As is where if you're sitting in shame, you're just spiraling and sitting and soaking and not really getting the shift. Yeah. So speaking about it, now, obviously, you need to choose who you speak to about these things because trust.
That lesson is something that is just like, I don't remember, it was on a recent podcast with one of those women that I think it was the Brianna West one, or I don't remember. I had a handful of podcasts at the end of the year that just had so much wisdom in them. Mm-hmm. And it was the clarification of like, it's, as soon as it resonates and I like feel it and own it, there's the other part of me that comes along for the journey and judges it. And oftentimes what that judgment is turning into is just kind of like laughter and kind of recognizing the humanness of it. But the recognition of like, there's parts of me that people aren't just warranted. Like the idea of people being like, was it the Brianna West one? Where she was talking about, no, it wasn't.
Oh, wait, it was Elizabeth Gilbert, wasn't it?
See, no? There's a bunch of podcasts on your, like I send Stephanie countless podcasts and we need to talk about the telepathy tapes as well. That's one.
I don't know if we're going to make it on this episode.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to it.
But
who knows?
Also, there's a little spoiler. Go listen to that and then follow us along when we talk about it in the future.
On the telepathy tapes? Yeah. I've been trying to decide how to talk about it because I don't want to give too much away. Yeah. I've been telling people that it's like it's a Netflix series that you're going to go watch and I don't want to like spoil it. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to have anyways. So we were like, there's parts of me that you don't like. I'm not going to answer that. There's parts of, it was the trad wife.
one.
Yes.
That was the one.
Yeah, it's the one where, and I don't remember
I'm
this.
sorry, I'm pointing now. You started the pointing,
you're
and
doing
I
great.
can't
I actually
stop.
want to have this woman come on the podcast because she had so much wisdom in her. It was like the experience that she had gone through with fundamental Christianity. What it felt like to me listening to her, it was going through shadow and coming out on the other side with so much wisdom.
Yeah.
Just like profound things that she was speaking to and could point at. And I think it's only because she had gone through the experiences that she had gone through. Do you know what I mean? And like I told you, like it's a 2-part episode on Glennon Doyle's podcast. I'm going to pull it up so that we can give credit where credit's due.
Okay.
But talk for a minute.
Okay. So while you're doing that, and you were talking about, because it was the trust and who you talk to, because you need to be able to bring things to light. And who you speak to is important, because you cannot trust anybody with these really vulnerable spots. And it's not like, oh, you have to be careful, you can't trust anybody. But I'm just saying you can't trust everybody. And not everybody is supposed to hold this space for you. So maybe the people that you can't trust, it's not their job for this. So it's not even a...
You ready? Sorry, keep going.
Oh my gosh, I'm in my thoughts. Hold on,
I'm
sir.
so sorry.
It's okay. You're like, found it, let's go.
ADHD, babe. What am I going to tell you?
But so just like choosing who you allow in that space to help you see, to help you move through things is really, really important, because not everybody can handle that. Not everybody has your best interest. It's not that everybody's out to get you, but not everybody has your best interest. And some people are working through so much of their own shit that given, they will throw that at you. And one of the best ways that I think that I found of like finding out who your people are is those who celebrate your wins.
Ooh, that is such a good barometer.
Yeah.
That is such a good barometer. Yeah. That's one that we've got massive awareness of in 2024. You pointed at it and I was like, ooh. And when you helped me see the difference between the men that I have in my life today versus the men that I've had in my life in the past, that's when I really saw it. And it was real clear. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I agree. I think that's a great way to gauge who, like who are safe, good people, like who your people are, who you should gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Who are those friends that you want to cultivate? Not even just friends, obviously, right?
Yeah. Okay. And you found it. So are we ready?
Yeah. So she's an author, Tia Leavings. I panic so much when it comes to pronouncing people's names. I feel so guilty when I mess names up.
I feel like I can't pronounce Harry if I'm like on the spot and reading it. I'm like, Harai? Like, did I get it? Sorry. Like like the anxiety comes up so bad.
It's so bad, huh? Tia Leavings? We'll do that.
And we're doing our best.
Yeah, we're doing our best here, folks. The podcast that she was on with Glennon Doyle, it's episode 369 and then 370. It's a 2-part episode. And like I said, it felt like I was listening to wisdom being spoken. And it was really interesting to me because it wasn't something that I think I've talked about Glennon. Here I go again. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before.
That's okay. And you can talk about her some more.
I love her podcast and I binged it for a really long time, was listening to every episode and had so many amazing insights from listening to all of these women have these really beautiful connected conversations. And what happened along the way, it was like I got so into it was just so cool. It was so cool to be able to listen to those conversations and hear parts of my story reflected back to me. And that was an interesting experience because it's like, how are, not just women, but it was just really fascinating to me. So I got that part of it was like a gift. So I kept listening and listening. And then I had, got distracted and gone elsewhere and was listening to other podcasts for a while. And so I hadn't listened to a lot of their summertime stuff. And then there was a day I was out driving and I was trying to find something to listen to. And I'm scrolling through their podcasts, seeing if any of them kind of jumped out at me. And this one jumped out at me, and I don't even remember why. And it's because, like I said, she was speaking wisdom. There was an aspect of it, the fundamental kind of Christianity thing, because of the Mormonism and the whole Mormon, being a Mormon back in Utah. You remember when we used to be Mormon back in Utah?
Back in Utah. Not I. Continue, sir.
So in this episode, she had a moment where she was talking about like going out on book tours. And one of the questions that she kind of always hates when she gets it is people will ask her if she still believes in God. And her response to what she tells people, and I'm paraphrasing it obviously through my filter, but what she says is that essentially, like, I don't answer that question because that information isn't for everybody. That's mine, my spirituality, my belief. There's parts of my story and me that just aren't for anybody. And it was like, it was a mic drop moment for me. Yeah. Like if she's on the podcast, I'm like, slow down. You got to say that all over again. We got to listen to that because you just said something massively important for my nervous system to hear. And all she was articulating was a boundary, but it was articulated in such a way that I felt it. And I felt the significance of like, oh yeah, I don't have to give all of Craig to everyone.
You don't have to give all of Craig to anyone.
Yes, babe. Yes.
You get to if so, but you don't. That's a big one. Is like nobody is owed 100% access to you.
Yes.
No matter what. Like you do not have to give access to everything that you have. You don't have to give access of other people if you're in the same thing. Like nobody is owed a 100% access to anybody else. And that gets trained out of us through so many different things where we think, oh, we have to divulge. We have to, give everything out there. And I can't think of the word. What's the word? Like, is it divulge? Is it like
it
everything?
Seems like it fits.
Seems
all
like
the words you're saying make sense to me.
I try it. Like you feel like you have to, like nothing, you're not allowed to have any privacy.
Not allowed to have any privacy.
Yeah.
And as we're talking, I'm seeing all these childhood experiences, all these moments, all of these, like there's no part of growing up being a child that is, there's no privacy. There's just, you know that at any given moment, your privacy is going to be violated.
Yeah.
And in the smallest ways at times, and even just in the simplicity of like, I remember when we had awareness of, and again, it's like the simplest of things sometimes, right? And this was years ago, babe. I remember you and I had awareness of like, just because we were married and just because we have sex and just because we have this sexual connect, like just because those things, just because we're comfortable naked in front of each other doesn't mean that your body and me, like you being in the shower or you just getting out of the shower and being naked, like if you get the opportunity to choose when and how you want to engage with me when it comes to, the array of clothes that you don't that I'm so nervous right now.
I know that's so scary. That's such a big thing to say. And you're like, you're expressing like nobody's entitled to your body, to anybody else's, to your.
And I remember when we had that awareness, it was like, as soon as I had that moment click in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then just immediately like knock on the door every single time.
Yeah.
Like our bedroom here in our new house here in Tennessee is set up where we have a nice big master bath and a master closet. And like, it's this nice little setup. So you can get out of the shower and still be in the closet. And I don't know if you're out of the shower yet, but I know if you're in the shower, I know that I don't go into the closet or into the bathroom without knocking. Our bedroom door isn't always closed, but as soon as I had this awareness, I just immediately felt so much compassion for you. And that was like an instantaneous fix. and I don't know if it happened at the exact same time, but then to have the awareness that I got the same was so strange for me. You know, it was so strange for me to be like, wait a minute. That means that I get that same human right.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that goes with, again, what you choose to talk about, what you choose to share with somebody, what you choose. And you don't have to go through it alone. And
all of these things are, you know, because I'm looking at so much of this stuff is connected to love, because the normal, regular, everyday human experience that everybody's having, that I am shaming myself for, I know I'm not alone. It's not a Craig thing. It's a human thing. I know there's other people out there that are 100% shaming themselves for really mundane, regular, everyday, normal human things that all of us are doing and not even thinking twice about. Yeah. And that list of stuff that I have shamed myself for, the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to lose love.
Yeah.
I don't want to not be loved. And we just talked about the boundary of like, not everybody is welcome to all of Craig. I don't have to give all of Craig to everybody. And that boundary, I would violate. Not only would I violate that boundary, the concept that there was there is no boundary in my earlier programming, right? I didn't have zero awareness that that was even an option, because that was my solution to not lose love.
Yeah. Relate.
That was my solution to fix my shame.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just give you all of me in whatever way that looks, right? I'll just show up and try to do everything I possibly can so that you continue to love me, because I'm so ashamed of who the fuck I am. Well, the spoiler was, I'm ashamed of normal human behavior that all of us do every single day. And I got like a little cocktail mix of what I'm shaming myself over because of my life and my parents, my upbringing and all those kind of things, right? And there's a lot of people that are going to have crossover with like my shame greatest hits and your shame greatest hits. But the truth of it is, they're just normal human behaviors. And we're all doing them. And some of us shame for this one, and some of us don't shame for this one, right? Some of us don't carry shame for repeating themselves twice, like, you know, and then some other people are going to be listening to this and be like, holy shit, that's exactly what it is. I'm ashamed because I repeat myself twice. Or I was told, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many components of this. This seems really important.
It feels important.
It feels important to me.
Yeah. There
like
you go.
it feels like I have such a greater understanding of shame. And it's given me this opportunity to just really, once again, like I said earlier, just really love myself way more.
That's
because
good.
These are just silly little things.
They're silly things. Even if they're big things.
I mean, this is silly here in this moment. Like, baby, you feel shame for farting.
Thanks, babe.
But I mean, it's a prime example of like, that one I didn't get. That one I didn't get. I didn't grow up and get shamed for farting. So I don't feel ashamed when I fart. And then right next to me in bed is a woman who hasn't been farting for like 12 years. I'm like, baby, just fart.
I'm
it's
very bloated.
It's normal, babe. We all fart. You know, I have so much shame around like, this is a whole other rabbit hole. Shame's a rabbit hole.
Okay. Well,
but
it's
just I'm so happy that I had this awareness. This has been such a gift for me.
Today's
Thank you
the
so
gift
much, babe.
day.
Yeah. I just feel like I've unlocked shame. Like I said, I'm hunting for shame now.
Okay.
I'm hunting for opportunities to love myself.
I like that verbiage.
Yeah.
I'm hunting for opportunities
To love myself.
To love myself.
Yeah. So show me shame and I'll show you love for myself. Because I farted or I burped. Burping was mine. Burping was my shame.
I know. And I didn't have shame around burping.
Right?
And when I found out you're like, eh, and then I was like, oh my God, I've been burping
When
around
you and I got
Ugh.
together, and I love our children.
Oh my gosh.
But there was two very distinct families when it came to burping.
There was
One
also
family-
two very distinct families when it came to farting. Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about. But how funny, right? It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because you guys are over there just burping away. The louder the burps, the better. You know what? Watch me burp.
Right. Do you know what you used to say when I was like, good bass? You're like, "Rah, good bass."
And every time I was just like, oh my God. You know? 'Cause
Right?
I'm like, I got to burp as quiet as possible.
Yeah, I know you were like, oh gosh, pardon me, excuse me.
Pardon me. It
But
was
the farts were, and I'm like, do the burps.
I know 100% where the burp shame came from.
Yeah.
I know. I remember very clearly we could not burp at the table. And every time we burped, we had to say, excuse me. And if we didn't say, excuse me after burping, boy,
What would happen?
I don't remember. Probably blocked it out.
Right? Like got knocked out.
That's the intensity of it
Yeah.
was like, you have to do that. If you don't do that, you're not accepted at this table. Okay, cool. Excuse me when I burp. So then I just stopped burping
Yeah.
because apparently
How did
burping's
you go?
death.
How did you take the table one area to every area?
Well, because it's the same reason why. So what do you mean? Like, how did I take?
Well, if you were taught, this is curiosity.
Yes,
so
I
if
get
you're
it.
feeling, but you're identifying where the burping shame came from.
Yeah.
And this is just like, this might be like the way that kids apply things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're like at the dinner table,
Mm-hmm.
you do not burp at the dinner table,
Mhm.
which it's not bad to have manners at the table, right? There's also like that of where it's okay to like have some
Time and a
rules,
place.
a time and a place. But you were taught, looks like very intensely,
Yes.
that this was not okay. And so there's also ways to teach.
Correct.
Anyways, you got the message that absolutely not.
Yes.
There's zero tolerance and there will be massive consequences
Yes.
at the dinner table. I think I might have answered my own question.
Yeah.
Because my question was, why did you think that if it was at the table, if you got this rule at the table, that it applied on the couch or in the living room
Everywhere.
or everywhere else? But then the way that I described it, I'm like, oh, I see how that conclusion would be made. If you learn a lesson hard enough, you don't think, oh, I can do it over here.
Well, it's
So-
it's so funny that we're talking about this because I've never put these pieces together for us, right?
Okay.
I've never had the awareness because when I'm like, we're laying in bed and I'm like, baby, just fart, like just fart already. Nobody cares, just fart, push the fart out, baby, just fart. Because I felt so bad that you felt shame for it, and I'm like, in the meantime, I'm farting.
I know.
Obviously, no big shocker to people out there because it's a normal human behavior.
Right.
But it was so funny. And I never realized that the exact same thing is going on with burping
Yeah.
because you did the thing where you just stopped farting. Don't fart. Right.
And I never started.
That's
I'm
the
one
whole
of those
thing.
weird
I know
people
that you would
fart.
hold and then you go blow it out your ass somewhere, right? But
Oh my gosh, I like when you would walk out the door, it was like rip, gee, let pull the cord,
right?
let her rip. I could feel a hot air balloon right now. Like, I need some space, dude. I gotta fart.
So obviously there was farting taking place.
Oh
throughout
yeah,
your
it
life.
happened. Our poor kids. Like
Okay, so-
sometimes Asher.
So
would
maybe
walk
the burp
around the
analogy
corner.
isn't going to apply because I think I just stopped burping.
You stopped burping, and I just was like careful who I farted around. And sometimes I would get so comfortable at being alone
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to like fart or burp whenever that I would forget at times. Like
Do you realize in this moment, because I'm sitting
we're still
here,
talking about fart and burps.
I'm sitting here thinking of like I feel like because the solution for me to tell you is like, baby, just fart.
Yeah.
And fart with love. Like you just are totally loved no matter what. No matter when the fart happens, no matter what the fart exists like, you know, if it's a 1 to a 10, it doesn't ever matter. And I'm trying to apply that same, I just be like, Craig, just burp.
Just burp.
Because my
burp right now.
immediate, I can't just do it on command.
Oh.
I know some of us who
Hold
were
my
never
beer.
shamed.
I can do it right now.
Some of us who were never shamed for farting and burping, you know, like obviously.
Can you fart on command?
I probably work one out. You know, I could probably get one in give me 30 seconds.
You got this?
My belly, I can probably do it.
Oh my goodness. All right.
So my work is going to be burp
okay.
without saying excuse me or pardon me.
Okay.
I'm just going to burp.
Okay.
And that alone, I know this might sound silly, right? But the idea, that was actually honestly hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Because the idea that I'm going to, because it seems so rude. And so you said earlier, you brought up a really good point where there's a time and a place where it's not appropriate to burp or fart.
Mm-hmm.
And if it happens, it's human. It's not a big deal. We all know that, right? But there's a time and a place where it's not appropriate. And that's an important lesson, right? And there's certain like stages of life where a lesson is applicable and it's not applicable.
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson for a child to learn at some point.
Yeah.
I didn't get that lesson when it came to burping. I got the lesson that you don't fucking burp, right? And that idea of like, in order for me to now, because this is how I process things and this is how I work with like inner child, because this is, well, not just the burping, but shame, this whole episode that 2025 just gave us, right? I'm so grateful that we've had this conversation, babe. And I'm so grateful that we've been able to like have it and share it with these people. We did not plan what we were going to talk about today. We didn't even really talk about what we were going to, like, there's some times when we would record and we'd be like, okay, we're going to get this topic. We're going to talk about this. We're going to do these things. Today, we didn't do any of that. We just showed up and started talking about whatever came out. And I'm really grateful for this conversation, babe. But as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about all of these opportunities to find ways to love myself now, right? I'm going to go hunt down shame so that I can turn it into love.
Opportunities to love yourself. Yeah.
And as that's happening, I'm like, okay, I've got the universe goes, perfect identification of a shame thing that you get to practice and heal, burping. And the way that you're going to practice healing this is you're going to practice burping without saying, excuse me or pardon me. Because I took excuse me and I minimized it. No, pardon me. I made it even smaller. So every time I would burp, I would like hold it in and expand I would internally keep that burp in. And if any little sign of it would come out, excuse me. I think there's something like super pathologically weird here because as I'm describing holding in a burp, that's what holding in a fart feels like.
It's releasing.
Very similar feeling, right? Because you're like, I got to fart, and you're like, no, you don't, and then it goes up into your belly, and I'm like, I got to burp, and then you're like, no, you don't, and then it like goes down into my chest and bubbles and expands and makes my chest hurt, and then like a little might come out, right? So as I'm sitting here thinking about this, just that simple act of saying or burping without saying excuse me, it feels like. It almost feels, not only does it feel impossible, it feels like I can't do that.
Okay. Can I interject something here?
Yeah.
So when we come up with something, and this is let's just look over here for a second and see how this would feel to, like, if we were talking to somebody on this. A lot of times when we come up with something that is...
Aren't we talking to me on this?
We are talking to you on this. We are talking to you. But a lot of times when we come up with something that we're like, oh, I can see this behavior, I can see this trait, and I want to... The first thing is like, I want to fix it, right? I want to fix it and rather than heal through it. I want to fix it. I got to stop it. And we go, and you're identifying like, this is a lot, and it might be, and you are capable of anything. You are a strong, courageous, amazing person. This is not minimizing your capabilities. This is looking at a loving way to proceed in things. sometimes, you can walk around here burping all you want. Obviously,
I know who I'm married to. The burp queen of.
Oh my God, I am not. So like tone your shit, cool your tits.
She won a burping contest once. It was the state fair of '94. I love you. Keep going.
What I'm trying to say is we go to almost to because shame's up, almost to a shame extreme. Like I'm going to go clear to this opposite end and do that. And that's painful and that's hurting. That's like rubbing, just the thing that can is like rubbing your dog's nose in pee. Like, you shouldn't have done that. And instead it's like, maybe we're putting, the pee mats by the door. We're doing it gently. So what if, because you're having a hard time even saying that and again, like, excuse me and pardon me has its time and a place. Not saying it doesn't. Where you burp and not has a time and place. But the fact that you're alone or next to me and you're like, I can't do this. And you're like, instead of just doing it without apologizing, if that's too big, just practice allowing yourself maybe a louder, excuse me. Just excuse me. Here we go. That's okay. Or like I burp. Just giving yourself
a louder excuse me.
Yeah. And
you know what that just triggered for me,
what did
babe?
that just trigger?
Because I've been trying to mull over. There's like I could look at a burp as a voice.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I could look at my voice. Do you know what I mean? I could look at the shutting down and the minimizing and the like taking excuse me and making it even smaller down to pardon me and just like making myself as small as possible. And how I would do that in order to survive the environment that I was in.
Yeah. You not only, just for you to look at things, not only did you say pardon me, you wouldn't stop at pardon me. You would always follow it up with a shame. You're like, oh, that's disgusting. Sometimes in a ball, like, oh, that's disgusting. I'm sorry. So it was like, pardon me.
Would I do that?
Oh, sorry.
See, that's shadow. Cause I knew that I would apologize. And as soon as you said I would follow it up with, I'm like, I don't follow it up with anything. And so what you just gifted me was something that it's that thing where our brain won't see what it doesn't want to see.
Yeah. I'm going and buying some LaCroix.
Right?
I was going to say beer, but like, you're going to drink that.
We got to go get our lime.
You are going to.
What are those ones that we liked? The lime and the coconut from Costco.
Oh, yes. The Topo Chicos. The lime. Yes.
Yeah. Topo Chico, you got to sponsor this podcast already. It's a prime opportunity. Topo Chico.
Yeah.
Burp is, I don't know. I don't know what the tag's
and then you get
be.
to just like drink and practice your.
This is what as we've been talking through it, and as I had the awareness of like, this is how I'm going to start practicing this, is in the safety of this beautiful fucking relationship where I feel so safe. I'm going to practice this around you. And when I mess up and say, excuse me, or pardon me again, I'm going to dump a bunch of love on me and then practice it the next time and practice it the next time and practice it the next time. And then at some point when I feel confident and safe enough, I'm going to go burp out in public and not say, excuse me or pardon me. Sometimes I have learned when it comes to this inner child healing stuff that we are so good at, part of it is I have to take the extreme from where it was and I got to throw it all the way over to the other side.
Yeah.
And I got to be there for a little bit. And I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to learn how to burp on command.
I can teach you.
I got the 1994 State Fair burping champ queen right here.
Okay, quit it.
Baby, let's break out a sash. We need a t-shirt. T-shirts for 2025.
For the record.
Burping queen
never entered a
Tennessee State
burping
Fair,
contest.
94.
I never entered,
Somebody
never
go
witnessed
AI
one.
that. Give us
Why
that AI
are you
clip.
trying to shame me?
I want an AI video of Steph at a burping contest in 94, Tennessee State Fair. That would be hilarious.
I was sitting here like getting ready to defend you in public if you're like out there, but I'm like, you know what? Do you see? Okay.
I love
Don't
you.
AI me burping contest winner.
no,
don't. I
don't.
can't even say words
Send
now.
it to Steph Craig. Steph Craig. Info at Steph Craig.
Okay, fine.
There was a couple of different things that I wanted to talk. We're going to wrap up, folks.
Do you want to do this conversation? Do you remember this?
The
I was
crystal?
holding this so I could remember to remind you about
Telepathy
the
tapes?
thought you had on Braidman Dare.
No,
No?
I'll just tell you that off air. It's not that cool of a story.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've held this the whole, which is good, but like also.
It was, I guess we can wrap on it. It's not like it's definitely not the profound episode that we've just had.
Well,
although
you
it's
can
associated with it.
You can tell me later if you want.
So we were recording the first episode of Braidman Dare for this year, and we moved everything out of the studio, as you know, right? But we moved everything out of the studio and we did a live episode in our kitchen. So I had to bring everything back in here and get everything set up. And in the process of doing that, it's like trying to get everything aligned properly. And every time Ben shows up, I got to adjust cameras, because I get it close, but then I adjust. I do the same thing with us.
Right, you have to move them back and forth
Yeah.
between sets.
Yeah, so it's a constant fine tuning when we get everybody on set sitting down. And when we were there, I have to adjust myself, and then I look and I come back and I check the TV and I see the screen and I see where we're at, and then I'll go make minor adjustments to my camera, and then I'll come sit back down, and you know what it is. You see it on your end. So I was doing that, and Ben was like, "Do you want me to adjust it?" He's like, "I can just adjust it." And it was this moment.
Did you karate chop? Yeah. No, Itachi.
It was so interesting because what happened was I told him, I'm like, no, that's okay. And I realized as I was up making the adjustment that what it sparked in me, it was like, I don't like people touching my toys. Because there's a part of me that looks at this entire setup that we have here with all these gizmos and gadgets and
galore.
Like I've got wires coming out of wires behind this setup here,
Thingamabobs.
I love
you got
it.
plenty.
I got, this is like, I love everything in this room.
You've done a wonderful job.
Right.
This
We've
is incredible.
got so many awesome things.
Yes.
And I love how it all fits together and everything. But there's so many toys to me in this room that I'm getting to play with that I don't like other people touching my toys.
Yes.
And when I said that, we kind of laughed and chuckled about it. And today, when I was adjusting the same camera on you, I had the memory of that moment. And I realized that I don't like other people touching my toys. When I was a little kid, guns were my jam. Like I didn't go through my guns phase. Like that was a big part of my life, was running around playing toy guns and, shooting each other for pretend, like making the sounds with playing guns. And I had an arsenal of different types of guns and pistols and rifles and all sorts of different things. And the majority of them were things, because it was, you remember the 80s, babe, you were there. So a lot of them were water guns that
That's where I learned to burp.
I learned it's good.
It's also the truth.
It's what we used to do in school before fucking social media, kids. We would learn how to burp.
Right.
So during that time period is my childhood, right? I had this rifle that I loved. It was this really cool toy rifle that had like it's not a lever action, it's a slide action. It's this little bolt action rifle that you would be able to work and manipulate and slide back. And it had like, this actually sound like the gun culture in this country and like the programming that I have as a child to play with guns like this, like it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like I'm hearing it from a completely different perspective as the current adult that I am, right? Like it's really sad that those were my toys.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? It's sad that we sell toy guns to kids in toy stores. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we wonder what's going on in this country. Well, that is kind of do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would make anyways.
Yeah.
That's really sad. But I had this rifle that I loved, and I let the neighbor boy. It was so. You remember
I know who it is.
Okay, I was going to say.
I know.
I had 2
I'm
neighbors
about to name You know who you are.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I let the neighbor kid use this rifle because he was an older kid, and I didn't ever let anybody use this rifle. I had a bunch of guns that I let everybody use. I'd bring out my guns, and everybody got to pick and choose what they wanted to use. But there were some of them that I was like, "This one's mine. I'm not letting anybody use this one." But that day, I let him use it because. Probably shame knowing this episode, right? For whatever reason, either I don't know if it was actually I remember exactly what the feeling was. I was afraid, and that's why I let him use it. Okay. Because sometimes I would let people use my stuff if I wanted to try to like impress them, like do you know what I mean? It was like, here, use mine. This is the cool one, right? You want to use this one. That wasn't the case with this kid.
Yeah.
I felt like
I
felt like I had to let him use that gun. And at the end of the game, we were all sitting around the pit. When I was a kid, we had a pit in the backyard. That's something else that happened in the 80s is we just dug holes. I'm not shitting you.
I was there.
Okay. What did you do growing up? We dug holes. What do you mean? You're like exactly what it sounds like.
Okay, I just realized.
We called it the pit. I'm not shitting you. Have I told you about the pit?
No, but I'm just realizing that maybe our parents did walk to school uphill both ways in the snow because the pit is real.
It's crazy.
Right.
In my mom's backyard, what you now know as the backyard, she has a mound, right? That mound is on top of the pit.
The pit.
And what the pit was a ginormous fucking hole that, truthfully, and to be honest, I dug.
Oh, you dug?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, the reality is my brothers did not really help me with that pit. A lot of people, there was somebody putting in a lot of time into that pit, and it was not my brothers. Like, the people that got to use that pit definitely did not put in the time to dig that pit. Anyways. I also really enjoyed digging the pit.
Yeah.
And I'm recognizing how ADD little boy that is, where it's like, dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole. Because I got to use chisels, I got to use shovels, I got to use all sorts of different cool tools. And I dug this really big hole.
That's cool.
And we would play in it all the time. It was like you'd run and jump into the pit, and then you'd be like crawling back up over the side of the pit, shooting guns. Like it was an awesome, what would that be? Like a
foxhole?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But, it was an awesome attraction in the backyard. Like it added something to the backyard that we would fill it up with water and swim in it.
Are you serious?
And it was
that's cool.
It was that like murky, soupy water. I
would have swam in that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we did. It was so freaking fun.
Like, not now.
I was going to say, we've got a bunch of those here in Tennessee, right?
You have to look for water moccasins out here.
The pit was awesome. And over the years, it turned into like the place that they would dump pears and grass clippings. And so it eventually just got filled in with yard debris and stuff like that. But I feel like I had a Sandlot summer with the pit that I dug. That's probably a beautiful movie I should make one day, right? Call it The Pit, and it's the whole Sandlot journey of me digging the pit. I love that movie. Yeah. That would be beautiful. Put that on my calendar. We get done playing guns this evening, and Ryan Marshall sits down on the edge of the pit. Oh, I know I said his name. I did not say his name on accident.
Right?
Sits down on the edge of the pit, right on top of a huge dirt clod. You remember dirt clods when they were like, basically, this one was a rock, even though it was just a huge, hard dirt clod.
I used to shape them into things.
Right?
Yes.
So he sits down on this dirt clod and hurts his ass and gets mad and turns around like reflexively and slams the gun on the dirt clod and breaks the rifle in half.
Wow.
And I was just like, that's why you don't let people use your stuff. And so that whole memory minus the awesomeness of the pit, which I think you and I need to talk about some more because it sounds really like a great
Apparently.
movie.
So we're about, yeah.
But that whole flash of a memory all came through adjusting the cameras and being like, I don't like when people touch my toys.
Yeah.
You know, and you think about it, like the thing that I'm so afraid of somebody using or touching these cameras is that they'll break.
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because when somebody touched my favorite toy, they fucking broke it in half. And it was like afterwards, because I was just like, it's okay. And I was heartbroken.
Aww.
And then I had like the 2 pieces, and I was a handy kid.
Yeah.
I used to convert my toys. Like I would take my little Hot Wheels and take off the tires and turn them into I made myself a flying DeLorean.
Yeah, there it is. I was trying to think of what it was called. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a bunch of fun. So when I looked at this, I was like, I can fix this. And it was a kind of a break where you can wedge the wood back together and it kind of interlaces again. So I kind of got it back together, and then duct tape, of course, right? Phew, duct tape that son of a bitch up. And it worked for like 10 minutes, and then it just became a floppy thing. So the end result was like a duct taped end of it. And then, so it was just like a pointless toy that I never really got to enjoy after that. And ever since then, I don't let people touch my toys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well,
isn't that an interesting little inner child story there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry I broke your toy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took it out on him at some point with pears. We used to have pear fights with those boys. I've definitely hit him with a pear or a dirt clod at multiple times. So yeah, I got my revenge. This episode is, I don't know, not this. I was going into ad reads.
Right?
This episode is brought to you by Wooly. No, this has been a gift. This has been a real blessing. Yeah. We're really grateful for everybody on the podcast.
You're doing so good. Really happy and grateful for all the support that you've given us. Coming along this journey, riding it out with us as we cluster our way through it all. Because we just sit down and talk.
With Shane, man.
And it started out with joy and happiness. And then we ended on shame.
If you and I would have said, hey, why don't we do an episode on shame? Both of us would have been like, fuck that. We're not doing an episode on shame. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's so funny. But I did want to mention that the thing that we're doing this year is just 1 episode a week.
Oh, yeah.
And so last year we did 2 episodes a week. And this year, because we've got so many fun projects that we're working on the side, we are cutting back to 1 episode a week. So new episodes of the Steph Craig show will be every Monday moving forward in 2025. And yeah, I don't know. Let's wrap it up, babe. Should we hit the road, Jack?
Let's do that. I was going to say, but I do want you to come back.
Don't you come back
no more.
Please keep coming back and subscribe to the Steph Craig show and share it with your friends. Tell your friends about this show, please.
It's so fun. We talk about parts and burps.
We're really codependent. Tell people about this show.
Watch Craig learn to burp. Hey, mister, expect the best.
Oh my God, did I forget the fucking best tagline?
Expect the best.
Plan for the greatest. On the next episode of the Burp and Steph Craig show.
Just take a chance, we got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me, we were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal experiences and insights, things we have found to be helpful on our healing journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.